The air on Shiroyama Hill was thick with the acrid bite of gunpowder, a suffocating shroud that clung to the ragged band of men huddled there. Distant cannons roared, their thunderous pronouncements a grim countdown to oblivion. Smoke, the spectral breath of a dying era, billowed and swirled, obscuring the vast, uncaring expanse of Kagoshima Bay below. This was the last stand. This was the final breath of the samurai, and at its heart stood Saigō Takamori, a man etched into the annals of Japan not merely as a warrior, but as the embodiment of a fading world. He was a symbol, a colossus casting a long shadow over the precipice of change, facing an enemy armed with the future. Before them, stretching out like a ravenous tide, was the Imperial Japanese Army. Tens of thousands strong, their ranks bristled with bayonets, their rifles spitting a deadly metallic rain. Against this overwhelming force, Saigō's loyal few, his Satsuma warriors, numbered scarcely more than a few hundred. They were the last defenders of a code, a way of life, armed with the souls of their ancestors and the keen edge of their katanas. The juxtaposition was stark, brutal, and absolute. The ancient steel of the samurai against the relentless, efficient firepower of the modern age. It was a clash not just of armies, but of epics, of philosophies, of souls. This was the moment that would define Saigō, the moment that would be debated for generations to come. Was his final charge a glorious testament to Bushidō, the warrior's code of honor, courage, and loyalty? Was it a defiant roar against the inevitable, a proud refusal to bend the knee to progress? Or was it something more nuanced, perhaps a tragic miscalculation, a desperate act born of unwavering principle in a world that had outgrown such ideals? The legend that would spring from this desolate hill painted a picture of unparalleled heroism, of a leader who would rather die with his men than surrender. But what was the truth behind the myth? What whispers did the wind carry from Shiroyama that September day in 1877? The weight of the world seemed to rest on Saigō's broad shoulders. His weathered face, usually a mask of stoic resolve, held a flicker of profound contemplation. He was not a man driven by glory, but by a deep-seated belief in justice, in the spirit of old Japan. He had seen his country transformed, its ancient traditions swept aside by the relentless currents of modernization. He had fought for reform, but when that reform led to what he saw as the erosion of the samurai spirit, the very soul of Japan, he found himself in rebellion against the very government he had helped to create. The Meiji Restoration, a period of rapid westernization and centralization, had dismantled the feudal system and abolished the samurai class. For Saigō, a staunch traditionalist, this was a betrayal of the nation's core values. He yearned for a Japan that retained its unique identity, its spirit of loyalty and its martial virtues, rather than blindly adopting foreign ways. His dissent, initially muted, grew into an open challenge when he felt the government had strayed too far from the path of true national spirit. He had tried to petition and persuade, to advocate for a more balanced approach that honored the past while embracing the future, but his pleas fell on deaf ears. The government, eager to shed its feudal past and establish itself as a modern power, saw his adherence to outdated traditions as a dangerous impediment. This fundamental divergence in vision, coupled with a perceived betrayal of the common people and the imperial ideal, culminated in the Satsuma Rebellion, a final, desperate attempt to reclaim what he believed was lost. His efforts to rally support for his cause had met with mixed success.
While many in Satsuma, still deeply attached to the old ways and loyal to their former domain lord, were willing to follow him, others, particularly those who had benefited from the reforms or saw the futility of opposing the central government, remained aloof or even joined the imperial ranks. This division reflected the broader societal schism that characterized the Meiji era, a nation wrestling with its identity. Saigō's campaign, though initially marked by striking battlefield victories that highlighted the ferocity and skill of his samurai, ultimately found itself unable to overcome the sheer logistical and numerical might of the Imperial Army. The government, under strong leadership and with access to foreign advisors and modern military doctrine, was able to mobilize resources and manpower on an unprecedented scale. His followers, their faces streaked with grime and blood, looked to him. Their faith was absolute. They were willing to follow him into the heart of the inferno, to meet their end with swords drawn and honor intact. They believed in their cause, in their leader, and in the ancient virtues they represented. They were the living embodiment of a dying spirit, a spirit that valued loyalty, righteousness, and self-sacrifice above all else. Their numbers dwindled with every passing moment as the imperial onslaught intensified. Each volley of rifle fire was a hammer blow, chipping away at their defiant spirit, but not breaking it. These were men who had pledged their lives to Saigō, to the ideal of the samurai, and to the Satsuma domain. Many were former officials, scholars, and samurai of high standing who had followed him from the beginning of the rebellion. Others were younger men, inspired by his charisma and his vision of a noble Japan. They had fought valiantly through a series of brutal campaigns, from the initial battles in Satsuma to the desperate retreat to Shiroyama. They were weary, wounded, and outnumbered, but their resolve remained unbroken, fueled by a profound sense of duty and an unshakable loyalty to their beloved leader. They understood the stakes. They knew this was likely their final stand, a culmination of their commitment. Their very presence on this hill was an act of defiance, a living testament to the values they held dear. The Imperial Army, under the command of figures like Yamagata Aritomo, a seasoned military strategist, had meticulously planned the final assault. They had surrounded Shiroyama Hill, cutting off any possibility of escape or reinforcement. The samurai, depleted and exhausted, were positioned on the higher ground, a strategic advantage that could not compensate for their lack of numbers and modern weaponry. The surrounding landscape, a rugged terrain that had once offered shelter, now seemed to conspire against them, channeling the imperial forces towards their final confrontation. The psychological impact of the continuous artillery bombardment, which had begun days prior, was also immense, wearing down the defenders' morale and inflicting casualties even before the infantry assault commenced. What could be more terrifying than facing an enemy that possessed not only overwhelming numbers, but also an unyielding technological advantage, knowing that your own courage, however immense, might ultimately be futile? The sounds of battle were a symphony of destruction. The sharp crack of rifles, the deeper boom of artillery, the screams of the wounded, and the war cries of the samurai blended into a chaotic, terrifying soundscape. Through the swirling smoke, one could see the glint of steel as the remaining samurai met the advancing imperial soldiers in brutal hand-to-hand combat. It was a desperate, valiant struggle, a testament to their unwavering courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Yet, even as they fought with the ferocity of cornered tigers, the sheer numerical superiority of the imperial forces was undeniable. The Imperial Army, comprised of conscripts trained in Western military tactics and equipped with the latest weaponry, advanced with a relentless precision that the samurai, despite their skill and bravery, could not match. Each bayonet charge, each organized volley, pushed the defenders back, thinning their ranks further with every brutal exchange. The contrast was stark and poignant. The individual prowess and spiritual fortitude of the samurai pitted against the collective might and technological superiority of the modern state. It was a struggle that echoed the broader conflict between tradition and modernity that was reshaping Japan. The very ground beneath them was soaked with the blood of both sides, a grim testament to the ferocity of the fighting. The air, already thick with gunpowder, was now also heavy with the metallic tang of fresh wounds and the oppressive silence that followed each wave of attack, broken only by the cries of the wounded and the relentless march of the imperial soldiers. Saigō, despite his own wounds, moved among his men, a steadying presence. He offered words of encouragement, a shared drink of sake, a final handshake. His presence alone seemed to ignite a renewed sense of purpose in their hearts. He was their anchor, their guiding star in this maelstrom of death. But the end was approaching, an inexorable, crushing weight. The Imperial Army, relentless and disciplined, continued its advance, pushing the beleaguered samurai further up the hill, closer to their ultimate fate. Saigō, struck by a bullet in the thigh earlier in the day, bore his pain with the characteristic stoicism of a true samurai. He refused to show any weakness, any sign of despair. He knew his men were looking to him, drawing strength from his resilience. He saw their unwavering loyalty, their willingness to die alongside him, and it filled him with a profound sense of responsibility and a deep, almost paternal affection. He was not merely their commander, he was their comrade, their inspiration, and in many ways their spiritual father. As the imperial forces closed in, their bugle calls echoing ominously across the battlefield, Saigō knew that the moment had arrived. He would not see his country transformed into something he no longer recognized without a fight. He would not compromise his principles. He would not surrender. He saw the faces of his loyal followers, etched with determination and acceptance of their fate, and in their eyes he found a reflection of his own unwavering resolve. He was acutely aware that this confrontation was not just a military defeat, but a profound symbolic moment, the final extinguishing of a way of life that had defined Japan for centuries. The very ideals he fought for, honor, loyalty, and the preservation of traditional Japanese values, were being systematically dismantled by the very forces of progress he had once championed. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of blood orange and fiery red, the final moments of the battle approached. The Imperial Army had encircled the remaining samurai, leaving them with no avenue of escape. It was in these final desperate minutes that the legend of Saigō Takamori would be forged in the crucible of fire and steel. He would not be taken alive. He would not witness the final subjugation of his ideals.
The question that hangs in the air, thick as the gunpowder smoke, is whether his final actions were the glorious culmination of a warrior's life or the tragic, defiant end of a man out of time. The historical record, pieced together from fragmented accounts and conflicting testimonies, paints a complex picture. The popular legend, heavily influenced by later interpretations and artistic embellishments, often portrays Saigō leading his men in a final suicidal charge, roaring defiance as he met his end, a perfect embodiment of Bushidō. This narrative emphasizes his unwavering commitment to honor, his rejection of surrender, and his ultimate sacrifice for his beliefs. It's a story that resonated deeply with a nation grappling with its identity, seeking heroes who represented the enduring spirit of old Japan. The very romanticism of his fate, the image of a noble warrior standing against insurmountable odds, became a powerful cultural touchstone, a narrative that served a purpose both for those who sympathized with the rebellion and for the Meiji government itself, which, after a period of vilification, eventually rehabilitated Saigō's image, transforming him from a traitor into a tragic hero who embodied the nation's spirit of sacrifice. This reinterpretation allowed the new government to incorporate the ideals of the samurai into the modern national identity, a way of bridging the chasm between the old and the new. Saigō became a symbol of loyalty, courage, and the unchanging spirit of Japan, even as the nation embraced Western technology and political systems. He represented a continuity of spirit, a reminder of the values that had forged the nation. This rehabilitation was strategically important as it allowed the government to harness the powerful cultural legacy of the samurai class, integrating its core tenets of discipline, loyalty, and martial spirit into the new military and national ethos. By framing Saigō as a tragic hero, the government could acknowledge the sacrifices made during the rebellion while still asserting the triumph of modernization. It was a clever maneuver that helped unify the nation under a new, albeit complex, historical narrative. The image of Saigō, the noble warrior, became a potent symbol of national pride, particularly as Japan began to assert itself on the world stage, solidifying his status as the quintessential last samurai. However, the reality, as often happens, is more intricate. The final moments are shrouded in a degree of uncertainty, exacerbated by the chaos of the battle and the political sensitivities of the era. Saigō was gravely wounded. His closest companions, loyal to the end, recognized that his life was ebbing away. They say that in his final moments, he did not issue a command for a charge, but rather a request to be spared the indignity of being captured or seen in defeat by the imperial forces. His lifelong friend, Beppu Shinsuke, is said to have been the one to grant him this final wish. As the imperial soldiers surged forward, Beppu, with tears in his eyes, turned to Saigō and asked if he could fulfill his final desire. Saigō nodded, and then, as the enemy closed in, Beppu reportedly severed Saigō's head, ensuring that the symbol of the rebellion, the heart of the Satsuma spirit, would not fall into the imperial army.
This act, while seemingly brutal, was, in the context of the samurai code, the ultimate demonstration of loyalty and respect for their fallen leader. It was a way to preserve his honor, even in death, by preventing his head from being displayed as a trophy by the enemy. It was a profound act of sacrifice from Beppu, who then likely perished himself in the ensuing melee, joining his leader in death. This detail, though grim, highlights the extreme measures taken by his followers to uphold his dignity and the ideals they represented. The precise sequence of events is debated, with some accounts suggesting Saigō made a last attempt to rise and join the fray before being struck down. The narrative of Saigō's final charge, a desperate, heroic rush against overwhelming odds, continued to capture the imagination more than the grim reality of his final moments. The battle itself was a devastating defeat for the Satsuma rebellion. The remaining samurai fought with incredible bravery, but they were ultimately overwhelmed. The imperial forces, meticulously planned and executed, systematically crushed the rebellion. The cost in human lives was immense on both sides. Shiroyama Hill became a bloody testament to the end of an era. The few hundred samurai who had stood with Saigō were decimated, their resistance extinguished. The rebellion, the last major armed challenge to the Meiji government, was definitively over. Japan's path towards modernization and westernization was now unhindered. The samurai class, which had dominated Japan for centuries, was now a relic of the past. Its martial spirit and feudal loyalties were superseded by the demands of a new industrialized nation. The very concept of the samurai, once the bedrock of Japanese society and military power, was relegated to history books and cultural memory, its practical function in society erased. The Imperial Army, having proven its efficacy and loyalty to the new regime, continued its trajectory of military development, laying the groundwork for Japan's later imperial ambitions. The battlefield itself, once a place of intense struggle, would eventually transform into a memorial site, a reminder of the profound societal shifts that had occurred. Saigō Takamori, the man who had once been hailed as a hero of the imperial restoration, had become his most formidable opponent. His rebellion was a profound statement about the cost of progress, about the struggle to balance tradition and modernity. He was a man caught between two worlds, a loyal servant of the emperor who found himself at odds with the very government that claimed to uphold imperial authority. His life and death encapsulate the tumultuous transition that Japan underwent during the Meiji era. He represents the deep-seated yearning for continuity, for a connection to the past in the face of rapid and often disorienting change. His unwavering adherence to his principles, even when it led to his destruction, is what continues to fascinate and inspire. Was he a misguided traditionalist clinging to a past that could not return? Or a prescient voice warning against the wholesale abandonment of a nation's soul? This is the enduring enigma that fuels the legend. His story is a stark reminder that even those who champion progress can become its victims if they fail to adapt, or if their vision diverges too sharply from the prevailing currents of change. He embodies the romantic ideal of the warrior, a figure whose life was defined by honor and loyalty, even unto death, but also the pragmatic reality of political and social upheaval.
The legend of Saigō Takamori endures not just as a historical event, but as a potent symbol of the enduring human spirit, of the struggle for one's beliefs, and the tragic beauty of a life lived with unwavering conviction. His story serves as a powerful reminder that progress often comes at a cost, and that the clash between old and new, tradition and modernity, is a timeless theme that continues to shape societies and define legacies. His final stand on Shiroyama Hill, whether a heroic charge or a quiet, honorable end, cemented his place as the last samurai, a figure who embodies the complex interplay of honor, sacrifice, and the inexorable march of history. His story is a poignant reflection on what it means to stand for one's ideals in a changing world, a narrative that continues to resonate with the human experience of navigating transformation and holding on to what one believes is true, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The very act of questioning the definitive narrative is what keeps his story alive, prompting us to consider the multifaceted nature of heroism and the subjective interpretation of historical events. Saigō Takamori, in his final moments, transcended the battlefield to become an enduring question mark in the heart of modern Japan, a symbol of the nation's complex journey from feudal past to global power. To truly understand the man behind the myth, to separate the legend from the history that shaped him and was shaped by him, join our ongoing investigation into the most compelling figures of the past. Subscribe now and let's embark on this journey together, uncovering the hidden truths and enduring legacies that define human history, one story at a time. What is your interpretation of Saigō Takamori's final moments on Shiroyama Hill? Was it the ultimate act of Bushidō, or the tragic end of a man out of time? Share your thoughts and insights in the comment section below, as your perspective enriches our collective understanding. If Saigō's story of conviction and conflict has captivated you, please hit the like button to show your support, and ensure you are subscribed with notifications turned on so you don't miss our next deep dive into the narratives that have shaped our world. We invite you to explore more stories of unwavering loyalty and dramatic change in our playlist dedicated to the samurai era, and to discover other figures who navigated the turbulent shifts between tradition and modernity in our Clash of Eras series. Your engagement fuels our exploration of history's most gripping tales.